Hello, YouTube. We are back with our final class in Chapter 3 of the Pathfinder 2nd Edition core rulebook. I'm your friendly neighborhood dungeon master, Zach Hall, as I attempt to learn Pathfinder 2nd Edition by reading the Pathfinder core rulebook cover to cover, and we are almost done with Chapter 3. I think we're going to end up with just one more video after this one covering the kind of addendums to the end of chapter 3, which will be perfect. And then we will move on to checking out stuff like skills and equipment. And then we'll probably hit up the playing the game chapter of the book. Maybe check out the playtest material if y'all are interested in checking out playtest, or if you just want to wait till it's official. But it seems like we might have to wait, 4 to 6 months before the actual advanced player guide is actually published. But anyway, all that not super important, because today we are talking about the wizard. As a preamble, all I will say is that I was not expecting a ton with the sorcerer, which we just looked at in the last video. But the class flavor and all of the customization really won me over to where I would be very excited to create a sorcerer. Wizards have never been incredibly appealing to me, but we'll see. I want to leave it up to Paizo and Pathfinder to kind of sell me on it. But in my experience with 5th edition, it's just been wizards are just the class that casts the most spells, and that's really what they're good at. But there hasn't been a ton of flavor around that, so I'm really interested to see what kind of flavor might draw me, a new player, into playing a Pathfinder 2nd Edition wizard. So let's dive in, check it out. Wizard, you are an eternal student of the arcane secrets of the universe, using your mastery of magic to cast powerful and devastating spells. You treat magic like a science, cross-referencing the latest texts on practical spellcraft with ancient esoteric tomes to discover and understand how magic works. Yet magical theory is vast, and there is no way you can study it all. You either specialize in one of the 8 schools of magic, gaining deeper understanding of the nuances of those spells above all others, or you favor a broader approach that emphasizes the way all magic comes together at the expense of depth. Obviously, our key ability is going to be intelligence, and our hit points is going to be 6 starting out, plus your constitution modifier. To be expected. Nothing terribly surprising there. Flavor for wizard is essentially what I expected. 8 schools of magic is interesting. I imagine that the schools will be the 8 schools of magic, and then you'll have whatever you want to call it, whatever they end up calling it, the broad catch-all master of many, jack of many, master of none. Class of wizard. During combat encounters, you like to stay out of the fray, carefully judging when to use spells. You save your most powerful magic to incapacitate threatening foes, and use your cantrips when only weaker foes remain. Great that they call that out, especially if there's any new players who are playing for the first time, giving them an emphasis on, hey, if you think your cantrip is going to do fine, use your cantrip. Don't blow a spell slot on a, little goblin. When enemies pull out tricks like invisibility or flight, you answer with spells like Glitter Dust or Earthbind, leveling the field for your allies, calling out the support that wizards can do in order to level the playing field for the rest of the party. Really great. During social encounters, you provide a well of knowledge about arcane matters and solve arguments with logic. While exploring, you locate magical auras and determine the arcane significance of magical writing or phenomena you uncover. When you run across an unusual obstacle to further exploration, you probably have a scroll that will make it easier to overcome. In downtime, you learn new spells, craft magic items, or scribe scrolls for your party, which will be great. and seek out new and exciting formulas in addition to spells. You might even forge scholarly connections and establish a school or guild of your own. You might have an unquenchable intellectual curiosity about how everything in the world works around you, magic in particular. Believe fervently that your school of magic is superior if you're a specialist, or that true mastery of magic requires knowledge of all schools if you're a universalist. Use esoteric jargon and technical terms to precisely describe the minutiae of magical effects, even though the difference is probably lost on other people. They'll probably consider you to be incredibly powerful and potentially dangerous. Fear what your magic can do to their minds, bodies, and souls, and ask that you avoid casting spells in polite company, as few can identify whether one of your spells is harmless or malevolent until it's too late. Assume you can easily solve all their problems, from dangerous weather to poor crop yields, and ask you for spells that can help them get whatever they desire. Really interesting. This top sheet is pretty much in line with what I expected the wizard to be. It is what it is. However, while the sorcerer almost immediately started pulling me in with the top sheet, as of now, it's basically, yeah, I'm a powerful magic user and I specialize in a school of magic, and can be a bit of a prick about it, is pretty much the gist of it that I'm getting so far. Not that it's bad, it's just, this is from my point of view. Not as interesting to play. I would be way more interested in playing a sorcerer or even a cleric before jumping into wizard as of right now. I'm normally not the type of person to where I read through a class list, see a feature, or in Pathfinder, a feat that comes available level 8 or 9 that I simply have to have, and so I will play that class and play till that level to achieve it. It's more like, can I picture this character in my mind and play them? Because I do kind of come from a role-playing background and focus. And Wizard hasn't got me yet, but we'll see. Let's look at the proficiencies: trained in perception, expert in will saves, trained in arcana, and then 2+ your intelligence modifier. So I'm not going crazy on skills, though. I would imagine that proficiency in arcana, and probably if I was creating a wizard character, I would probably spend my skills on lore-ish to just lean into the being incredibly intelligent. You are trained in club, crossbow, dagger, heavy crossbow, and staff. But if you're a wizard, you are probably in trouble if you are using any of those things for a strike action. Untrained in all armor, as expected, and then arcane spell attacks and DCs trained in. It'll be interesting to see how much that proficiency goes up. And I would imagine that at some point wizards will hit legendary in those. To be expected, I would imagine. So let's check out the arcane spell casting. This took me a bit with the sorcerer to kind of piece all of it together. As you can remember, I have no experience with Pathfinder, only experience with 5th edition D&D, and without really diving too much into the actual mechanics of how the game is played, I've only been really gleaning how the game is played through reading the first several chapters. It took me a while to get what the spell casting for a sorcerer was all about, so we're going to take this slow to make sure I get it, and if I'm wrong, chat, let me know. You can cast arcane spells using the cast a spell activity, and you can supply material, somatic, and verbal components when casting spells. At first level, you can prepare 2 first level spells and 5 cantrips each morning from the spells in your spell book, plus 1 extra cantrip and spell of your chosen school of each level that you can cast if you are a specialist wizard. So you're a specialist wizard at level 1. In total, you can prepare 3 first level spells and 6 cantrips, and you can swap those cantrips out each morning. It's not like you pick cantrip and you can only swap out 1 at a time as you level up and learn a new cantrip. You can swap out those 5 cantrips every day Huge amounts of flexibility. Prepared spells remain available to you until you cast them, or until you prepare your spells again. The number of spells that you can prepare is called your spell slots. So I think that's a great way of phrasing it, and I apologize if this is the last class. This is probably the fourth time that the Pathfinder rulebook has laid it out as such. But I will say that comparing spell slots to, because prepared spells equal your spell slots, at least for the wizard, it removes kind of the ambiguity of what a spell slot means, especially in Dungeons and Dragons, where it's kind of, especially brand new players to the TTRPG world, it's hard to envision the kind of ambiguous game terms, namely things like hit points and spell slots. Like, what does it mean? Well, for wizards, it means that it takes a certain amount of material and memorization to be able to cast a spell, and casting a spell gets rid of that material needed, like whether it's a fluff of cotton or a specific piece of paper with a specific symbol written on it, what have you. Casting that spell that first time consumes that material, and it takes you to prepare all that material at the beginning of the day, which is why I also think it makes sense that, like, if I want to cast Fireball multiple times, I have to prepare it multiple times. Makes sense. As you increase in level as a wizard, your number of spell slots and highest level of spells you can cast from spell slots increase. Some of your spells require you to Yep, so heightening spells. When you gain spell slots of second level and higher, you can fill those slots with versions of lower level spells. This increases the spell level, heightening it to match the spell slot. Many spells have specific improvements when they are heightened to certain levels. Cantrips is a special type of spell that doesn't use a spell slot. So essentially, the cantrip, even if it does have a material component, it's either so easy for you to have access to, you have an unlimited supply of it, or it doesn't consume the material, however you want to put it, I would imagine. Cantrips automatically heightened to half your level rounded up, usually equal to the highest level of spell that you can cast. So, for instance, as a 5th level wizard, your cantrips are 3rd level. All right, let's check out our spellbook. You start with a spellbook worth 10 gold or less, which you receive for free and must study to prepare your spells for each day. Your spellbook contains your choice of 10 arcane cantrips and 5 first level arcane spells, which means that you are choosing, assuming you're a specialist, you are out of the 10 and 5, 10 cantrips, 5 spells, you are choosing 3 of those 5 spells and 6 out of the 10 cantrips. It's a good amount. You can choose these from the common spells on the arcane spell list, or from other arcane spells you gain access to. You name it, and it can be whatever form you want it to be. Each time you gain a level, add 2 more arcane spells to your spell book of any level of spell you can cast. You can also use the Arcana skill to add other spells that you find in your adventures as described on page 241, which I would imagine would be through something like you find a spell scroll. The fly spell is written on the scroll, and it takes you, probably X amount of time, X amount of materials, and a successful arcane check to be able to copy that spell into your own spell book, representing the time it takes for you to have learned it, how I understand it. Arcane school. Yep, so you can either be a specialist and then choose a school, or you be universalist. Arcane Bond, interesting. You place some of your magical power in a bonded item. Each day when you prepare your spells, you can designate a single item you own as your bonded item. This is typically an item associated with spell casting, such as a wand, ring, or staff, but you are free to designate a weapon or other item You gain the Drain Bonded item free action once per day. As a free action, and you haven't acted yet on your turn, you can extend the power stored in your bonded item. During your turn, you gain the ability to cast one spell you prepared today and already cast without spending a spell slot. You must still cast the spell as the action and meet the spell's other requirements. Interesting. Reading through Arcane Bond, I immediately think of my favorite wizard and potentially your favorite wizard, Harry Dresden, from the Dresden File novel series by author Jim Butcher. If you play Pathfinder or D&D or any other fantasy-ish and you're not or have not read the Dresden Files, shame on you. Go read it. If you can't afford it, I will probably gift it to you. For real. Because it's that good. I'll get you started. But for instance, Harry Dresden periodically in between books, essentially downtime of huge adventures that normally last a weekend, he imbues like a book I just finished reading on like my fourth reread of the series. I think he imbued like in just pure energy into a belt buckle that let him basically overcome pain level and exhaustion to be able to keep moving. He has stored like almost what I would consider almost like a magic missile, or I think there's actually a D&D item like a Ring of the Ram where expel force energy from a ring that you've stored up over time. In this specific case, you could put like a flame strike similar spell and a staff and be able to use it once. So it basically gives you another free spell that scales with you because it's basically any spell. So you can, eventually store a 5th level spell in your staff. And as long as you've got your staff on you and you've maybe cast that already, it's an interesting mechanic of like that you've already cast it today. I don't really get the flavor of like the story that they're trying to tell with that. So if chat has an idea. Oh, Ollie, I love Fate. I think Fate is my favorite system, period. I don't run fantasy games with it. I don't feel a huge need. I generally run modern games. I ran for a Twitch channel earlier this year. I ran a superhero Fate core game. And ran in my head, I have both a Dresden Files game located in like my home city and a Fate game taking place in the Expanse, probably another like right up there with Dresden Files of one of my all-time favorite book series. If you are not familiar with Fate core, I will probably end up doing a whole video about it. Oh, okay. So Helton is letting me know in chat, drain bonded item is basically like a battery. Drain the battery to recharge a spell that you've already used. Then river is more like a reverse battery, like it's almost like it catches some of the extra energy from a spell that you've already cast and allows you to be able to cast it again without that. Both River and Helton, thank you. I think that makes sense. It's interesting and not what I initially envisioned, and really I don't feel like is what they really spelled out in this first paragraph, but that's fine. It's still a great ability that gives you even more flexibility as a spellcaster. Arcane Thesis. You produced maybe the reason why I don't feel super attracted to playing a wizard is because I'm a terrible classroom student. And all of the flavor and really being a wizard is centered around being very studious and academic, and that is just not me. You are talking to a college flunk out who has, through high level of privilege and equal amount effort, has been able to make something of myself in spite of that. But yeah, playing a wizard feels like going back to school, and I have no desire to go back to school. Arcane Thesis, you produced a thesis sometime during your studies. You produced a thesis of unique magical research on one of a variety of topics. You gain a special benefit depending on the topic of your thesis research. The Arcane Thesis topics presented in this book are below. Your specific thesis probably has a much longer, more technical title, like on the methods of spell interpolation and the genesis of a new understanding of... Sorry, that's not a shit on the feature itself. Just, yeah, you're a PhD student. So one of the options, you can improve a familiar attunement. You gain the Drain Familiar free action instead of the Drain Bonded item. It's the same, except you draw magic from your familiar instead of an item. All right. Meta magic experimentation gives you access to various meta magic effects similar to a sorcerer. You gain a first level meta magic wizard feat as a bonus. And then starting at 4th level, you can gain a meta magic wizard feat of your choice that has a level requirement of no more than half your level. Very cool. Spell blending. When you make your daily prep, you can trade 2 spell slots of the same level for a bonus spell slot of up to 2 levels higher than the traded spell slots. That is... And you can also trade any spell slot for 2 additional cantrips. That is a lot of extra flexibility and gives you way more... Your power spikes as a wizard, essentially when you gain access to a new spell level, just makes that spike even bigger, because you're going to be able to cast less spells in total, but be able to potentially do more efficient damage or have a much bigger effects and spells, which is crazy. Spell substitution. You spend 10 minutes to empty one of your prepared spell slots and prepare a different spell from your spellbook in its place. If you're interrupted, the original spell remains prepared and can still be cast. So there's no real sacrifice to subbing a spell other than you wasted 5 minutes of your time. It's crazy. Skill increases at 3rd level and every 2 levels thereafter. Is that on par with everything else? Expert spell rolls and DCs at 7th. Expert unarmed armor at 13th. Master spell casting at 15th. 10th level spell at 19th, and legendary spell casting rolls and DC at 19. All right, so let's check out our arcane schools. It's going to give you, if you specialize, you gain an extra spell slot for each level of spell you can cast. You just go ahead and get, you can only prepare spells of your chosen arcane school in those extra slots, but that makes sense. Getting that, wow, so even more spell slots. So you have that in your spell book. You also learn a school spell, a special type of spell taught to students of your arcane school. They're a focus spell. Automatically heightened to half your level rounded up like a cantrip. So let's check out these school spells and then dive into feats. I'm interested to see what kind of customization wizards really have access to beside I feel like it's just you get what you have at first level and then you just get more and more spells, but we'll see what kind of feats we have to kind of customize our wizard. So abjuration is the art of protection. So protective ward is your school spell. Conjuration is for summoning creatures and objects. You learn the augment summoning school spell. Divination, remote viewing, prescience, learning information, research, battle strategies, knowledge is power. Diviner's sight school spell. Enchantment, use magic to manipulate others' minds. Mind surpasses matter. You learn the charming word school spell. Evoker, raw power of magic, create and destroy with ease, call forth elements, forces, and energies. Most direct approach is the most elegant. You learn the force bolt school spell. Illusionist, magic create images, figments, and phantasms. You learn the warped terrain school spell. Necromancy, call of the grave. Transmutation, physical boost. And then, so what is universal? Like, what do benefit do universalists have? By studying all schools equally, for each level of spell that you can cast, you can use drain bonded item once per day to recall a spell of that level instead of using it only one per day in total. You gain an extra wizard class feat, and you add one first level spell of your choice to your spellbook. Alright. That's cool. So you do get a little more customization. And it looks like there's feats that require you to be a universalist wizard. So Helton's letting me know in chat, wizards, like all other casters, don't gain a class feat at first level. This was corrected in erotica. Not erotica, chat. You know what I meant. Errata? Is it just, what did you say, errata, I guess? Errata? That's a word. That is a word I really only ever see spelled. Not something I say out loud. Errata. Whatever. Alright, so you get Counterspell is a reaction feat. You can't take it at first unless you're a universalist. I guess you could take Counterspell. Thank you, Helton. Not your fault that I said erotica. Though I guess there's Rule 34 for a reason. Eschew materials. When casting a spell that requires material components, you can provide those material components without a spell component pouch by drawing intricate replacement sigils in the air. Unlike when providing somatic components, you still must have a hand completely free. This doesn't remove the need for any materials listed in the spell's cost entry. That's cool. Familiar, you make a pact with a creature. We're going to cover, I believe, familiars and animal companions in the next video to finish up chapter 3. Hand of the Apprentice, Universalist Wizard. Hurl your weapon at a foe magically. You gain the Hand of the Apprenticed Universalist spell. Universalist spells are a type of focus spell, so Universalists are not left out of the focus spell world. Cool. Reach spells and meta magic. Extend the range by 50 feet. Widen spell. It's interesting that wizards are getting access to meta magic at that in 5th edition at least. That is a very sorcerer thing to do. So it's just kind of crazy that, I mean, obviously they're not getting as many access to meta magic, but just the idea that a wizard could use like reach or widen, which are probably conceal here at the next level, which is obviously a big part of the sorcerer class. It's really, really interesting. A river called Hand of the Apprentice, the Yeet spell, and that is beautiful. Mad I didn't think of it first. Claps in chat for river. Cantrip expansion. Prepare 2 additional cantrips each day. Conceal spell is a concentrate meta magic. Excuse me. If your next action to cast a spell, stealth check against one or more observers' perception DCs. And then if it has a verbal component, you must also attempt a deception check against observers' DC. If you succeed at your check or checks, the observer doesn't notice that you're casting a spell, even though material, somatic, and verbal components are usually noticeable, and spells normally have sensory manifestations that would make spellcasting obvious to those nearby. Hides only the spellcasting actions and manifestations, not its effects. Yeah. Enhanced familiar, if you're really leaning into a familiar wizard. Bespell weapon, free action once per turn. Most recent action was to cast a non-cantrip spell. You can siphon spell energy into a weapon you're wielding, and in your turn deals an extra d6 damage or type depending. We saw this with sorcerers, I believe. Linked focus, you have to have had Arcane Bond and an Arcane School. Once per day, you have linked your bonded item to the Well of Energy. When you drain your bonded item to cast a spell of your Arcane School, you also regain a focus point. Highly useful. Very cool. And then silent spell, you can cast many of your spells without speaking the words of power. You don't have to make a check, but it still has visual manifestations. When you use silent spell, you can choose to gain the benefits of conceal spell, and you don't need to attempt a deception check because this spell has no verbal components. Oh, so you could do silent spell and conceal spell in the same turn, and if you do because you do silent spell first, you don't have to make the deception check. All right. Metamagic as a sorcerer exclusive is a strong 5e ism. Okay, interesting. And then Helton and Ollie follow up with 3.5 and Pathfinder 1. Any class had access to metamagic. Good to know. This is why I like having you guys here, chat. Educating me. I'm learning. Learning is important. Spell penetration. Sorry. That's what happens when I try to get stupid and funny about the word penetration because I'm a child. OBS, do I have audio back? OBS says I have audio back. Ugh, pardon me. That's what I get for like having my wires like all secured and neat, and then I go off and do something stupid. Going back, steady spell casting, 15 flat DC check. New school spells. Energy absorption for observers. Conjurers get dimensional steps. Universe punish you for your sin. Yeah, damn right. Diviners, a vigilant eye. Enchanter, dread aura. If you're an evoker, elemental tempest. Illusionist, invisibility cloak. Necromancer, life siphon. Transmuter, shifting form. And you get to add total of 1 to your focus point pool. Yeah, River, 10 seconds of inconvenience for my sin. Actually, that is on the level. The universe has been fair this day. Bond conservation for an action, metamagic, arcane bond, and then the last action you used was the drain bonded item. Action bike. You can conserve just enough power to cast another slightly weaker spell. If your next action you use is to cast a spell using the energy from drain bonded item, you gain an extra use of drain bonded item. You must use this extra use of drain bonded item before the end of your next turn or lose it, and you can use this additional use only to cast a spell 2 or more levels lower than the... I get what they're doing. It's wordy as hell. But yeah, I get it. Okay. If you really want to lean into using drain bonded item a shit ton, then yes, that is useful, and you can make some cool combos and back-to-back turns with it. It was just wordy as hell. Universal versatility, Handed the Apprentice. Yeah. So during a daily prep, choose one of 8 school spells gained by first level specialist wizards. You can now use that school spell until your next daily prep. When you refocus, you can choose a different school spell from among those 8 school spells, replacing the previous one increase. So it is a level, a feat 8 for the universalists that are essentially just a version of what advanced or specialists got. Cool. Overwhelming energy, another meta magic. Overcome resistances, ignore an amount of resistance to acid, cold, electricity, fire, or sonic equal to your level. All damage the spell deals, including persistent and damage caused by an ongoing effect, like Wall of Fire. Immunities are unaffected. Quickened casting we saw with sorcerers. Scroll savant, expert in crafting. During a daily prep, 2 temporary scrolls containing arcane spells from your spellbook. They follow the normal rules for scrolls with some additional restrictions. They must be of a different spell level, and they must be 2 or more levels lower than your highest spell level. Any scrolls you create this way become non-magical the next time you make your daily prep. Temporary scroll has no value. If you have mastery proficiency in arcane spell DCs, you can create 3 during your daily prep. If you have legendary, you can create 4. This is very useful to be able to hand out to your other party members, or for yourself to be able to cast some lower level spells without actually wasting a spell slot. Clever counterspell. Instead of being able to counterspell a foe spell only if you have the same spell prepared, you can now use counterspell as long as you have the spell in your spellbook. Sweet. Very cool. Magic Sense. Basically have first level detect magic on all the time. Bonded Focus. If you spent 2 focus points since the last time you refocused and your bonded item is in your possession, you recover 2 focus points. Reflect spells. If you successfully counter spell You can turn it back. I think we saw that with Sorcerer, Superior Bond. You now use Drain Bonded Item 1 additional time per day. Effortless Concentration. Free action, you can immediately gain the effects of sustain a spell action. Spell Tinker, 2 actions. You've learned to alter choices you make when casting spells on yourself. After casting a spell on only yourself that offers several choices of effect, such as resist energy, spell immunity, or a polymorph spell, you can alter the choice you made when casting the spell. But if you do, you reduce its remaining duration by half. You can't use this feat if the benefits of the spell have already been used up, or if the effects of the first choice would persist in any way after switching. For instance, if one of the choices was to create a consumable item you already used or to heal you, or if the feat would create an effect more powerful than that offered by the base spell, GM is the final arbiter of what spell Tinker can be applied to. Really interesting. I really like the idea of being able to make choices with a spell that other people can't make. I would rather, and it's possible that it's just because I don't know the spells. I'd be more interested in, I don't know, making a spell that is a single target AoE, or vice versa, or that kind of thing. The Spell Tinker seems really, really specific, and I could see why, like, if you did spell immunity, to be able to say now, like, I was immune to this person's power word kill, but now that they used that one slot up, I'm gonna switch it to, meteor shower or something like that. But again, it just seems really, really, really specific. I am sure. I love the flexibility of being able to change something after the fact. And maybe when I look at the spell chapter, I will have more understanding that there's a ton of spells with options. My understanding, like the spell list in 5th edition, there's not a ton that Spell Tinker would really make use on. Infinite possibilities. You can prepare a spell slot that exists in your mind as many different possibilities at once. Once during your daily prep, you can use a spell slot to hold that infinite potential rather than using it to prepare a spell. Use this spell slot to cast any spell from your spellbook that deletes 2 levels lower than the slot you designate. The spell acts in all ways as a spell of 2 levels lower. You don't have any particular spell prepared in that slot until you cast it. That is kind of what I envision the high level wizards. I am so good at casting spells, I don't even really have to prepare X spells or lower because I would be able to do it like that. Or instead of infinite possibilities, you can instead re-prepare a spell, reuse some of your spell slots over and over. You can spend 10 minutes to prepare a spell that you already cast that day. Regaining access to that spell slot must be 4th level lower and one that does not have a duration. You can repair a spell in this way even if you've already re-prepared the spell previously in the same day. If you have the spell Substitution Arcane Thesis, you can instead prepare a different spell in an expended slot as long as the new spell doesn't have a duration. Interesting. Cool. All right, 20th level feats. And then we're done with the official classes. Archwizard's Might. You have mastered 10th level spell slot. That's what it is. Metamagic Mastery, Metamagic single actions, free actions. Spell Combination. You can merge spells producing multiple effects with a single casting. 1 slot of each level of spell you cast, except for 1st and 2nd level, becomes a spell combination slot. This doesn't apply to cantrips. When you prepare your spells, you can fill a combination slot with a combination of 2 spells. Each spell in the combination must be 2 or more spell levels below the slot's level, and both must only target one creature or object or have the option to target only one creature or object, which is why this doesn't apply to first and second spell levels, because there's no such thing as a, you know what I'm saying. Each spell in the combination must also have the same means of determining whether it has an effect. Both spells must require a ranged spell attack roll, require the same type of saving throw, or automatically affect the target. When you cast a combined spell, it only affects one target. If any spell in the combination has further restrictions, such as targeting only living creatures, you must abide by all restrictions. Combined spell uses the shorter of the component spell ranges. Resolve it as if it was a single spell, but apply the effects of both component spells. For example, if the spell's target succeeded the save against a combined spell, it would apply the success effect of each spell. And if it critically failed, it would critically fail both. Okay, that's really, really cool. Kind of more in line of kind of what I imagine high-level archwizards to be able to do. Again, really specific, but I think it would be pretty sweet and be able to do a ton. And I'll try to keep that in mind when we check out spells. And that's it for our official classes in the rule book for Pathfinder 2nd edition. Next video, we're going to spend a few minutes just going through multi-classing. Okay, there might be 2. Shoot. Okay, there's going to be 2 more videos. I hadn't looked ahead. I'm going to do a really quick video on animal companions and familiars. That's going to be a short video. Probably won't even bother live streaming it. I'll pre-record it and upload it. But the next live stream that we do will be to cover archetypes, because it's talking about multi-classing, which we have. If you've watched the video series previously, you know, like I had questions and was kind of talking about multi-classing specifically with the monk class. So it'll be interesting to check that out. Anywho, thanks for everybody that tuned in and watched and have watched me crawl through the first 3 chapters of the Pathfinder rulebook. Like I said earlier, I do believe I'm just going to keep going and check out the skills chapter next, because skills are seem to be so much more expansive and specific in how they are used versus 5th edition, where, you know, pretty GM reliant to just kind of choose. Skill seems very more specific in Pathfinder, so we want to take our time and we'll do that. After that, my instinct is to then check out the playing the game chapter. But if you have any recommendations or something that you would like me to cover before jumping to playing the game, let me know. But I still plan on going through the entire rulebook. It's just I want to, before jumping into feats or any flavor, so like the Age of Lost Omens chapter, I want to get into the playing the game so that I can talk on a more mechanical level. I think we've had our fun for the past 15 videos of Sunners, seeing me scramble around trying to figure out how things work. Hopefully playing the game and the skills chapter will help answer that. So thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, hit the like button, leave a comment below. If you are excited to see more videos from me around the Pathfinder 2nd edition, click on the subscribe button. Why not? Over 150 other people have done so. Why not join them? And I am contemplating doing a giveaway when we hit 200 subscribers. What kind of thing would you be interested in me giving away? Like, would it be cool for me to give away like a PDF of the core rulebook? That would be very thematic. Can gift you one like officially from the Paizo website, or should we do a non-core rulebook book like the Bestiary or the Lost Omens character guide, I think is what that's called. So if you have ideas on what a giveaway should be when we hit 200 subscribers, leave a comment below and we can check it out. I've also had the idea, I often do these videos in the afternoon because we get a good amount of decent amount of viewers for the tiny channel that I am, but sometimes I want to hang out and stream live in the evenings that don't make sense for me just doing a PDF review. So I have purchased the Pathfinder, is it Kingmaker? The most recent, the Pathfinder video game that was released last year. I've heard they made some recent updates to the game that have made it not a brand new game, but one maybe that's made it a lot better, maybe taking it from like a C to a B plus. And I've never played it before, but it looks similar to other top-down or role-playing games like Divinity and what's the other one? Pillars of Eternity that I've played and have enjoyed, but thought that might be fun to stream that Pathfinder video game in the evenings here on the channel. So if you're interested in that, let me know in the comments, and maybe we can schedule something and have something regularly scheduled for those streams. So anywho, thank you for watching. Can't wait to dive into the rest of the Pathfinder rulebook now that we're done with classes, and we'll talk soon. Thanks. Bye.